Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. Yeah, Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, faith fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. The Nomiki show. Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. Yeah, clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, faith fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show.
Hello and welcome to TNS Live. As you guys know, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have an extended conversation, a one-on-one with some of the greatest thinkers on the left. Sometimes we bring on others to debate us as well, but they're longer conversations. And we start them off here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Nomiki Show. And we finish it over at Rockfin YouTube, and then we finish over at Rockfin. So join us at rockfin.com/Nomiki for our TNS Live exclusive. Today, we are going to be talking about how the right wing, the nouveau right, or maybe it's not nouveau, which we'll get to, is mimicking and trying to hijack the left's talking points, which is not new to them at all. But I'm of the belief that they had to do this because they saw the demographics were shifting away from them. And so you've seen this hard turn, obviously, towards populism under Trump, but it's more than that. And we are talking about it with the one, the only, Professor Harvey Kaye. Let's bring Professor Harvey Kaye to the show. He is, of course, Professor Emeritus at the Democracy and Justice Studies at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. He is the author of many books, and there's a new old one, you're republishing, right?
It'll be the third edition coming out this spring of a book I first published in 1984-85, the winter, 84-85.
The third or fourth, so every decade you have a new edition, essentially?
Well, I missed out on the 2000s, I guess, but so it came out in 85, 95, 96. What happens is it's when the book has been printed a certain number of times by a publisher, and they feel that they've used up their market. And I end up getting the rights back. And in each case, I get contacted by another publisher saying, can we pick it up and reissue it? So
is that how the business works?
Well, we could do a whole session sometime on how the business works.
I would love that. I think people would find it fascinating.
Yeah, the first publisher was a British publisher, and it was in print for 10 years and did for my purposes very well. And then it went out, and immediately another Anglo-American press, transatlantic press, Macmillan, picked it up, reissued it in hardback and paperback. I added a preface, and Eric Hobsbawm, one of the most renowned historians of the 20th century, was kind enough, since he was a subject in the book, he actually was kind enough to offer a foreword to it. And then he passed away it must be almost a decade now. And the book, it's funny, I didn't know the book had been sold to another press, which was illegal to do without my permission. So I laid claim to it, and then Zero Books said, any chance we could bring it out, and here it comes. I hope
that's the pathway,
sooner rather than later.
That's how you got here today.
Yes. Well,
who better to have on to talk about the hijacking of the left by the right and their ability to just so nimbly shift when they don't actually believe in things. It's a lot easier to do so. But you, and we've had these conversations offline. I want to start off with this piece that you've highlighted, and we can put it up on the screen because I think you're onto something here. This piece is titled "American Small Business is Being Murdered." And I think you and I would probably agree with that, but it's fascinating that the folks who believe this tend to be the same folks who are funded by big business and monopolies and have done absolutely nothing to take on monopolies, and of course big banks and big industry. And it's just convenient that suddenly it's all about small businesses. It's almost like saying that Chamber of Commerce actually cares about small business rather than using it in name only.
Yeah, it's funny. I can tell you, I didn't go looking for this article. I was in a Barnes and Noble, I guess 10 days or so ago. I'm losing track of the actual date. And I was over in the magazine section. I wanted to pick something up to have with coffee. And the cover of the Newsweek that week was like a picture of Biden, and the title was something to the effect of, "Can Biden redeem his presidency?" Something to that effect. So I sat down at the table with the coffee, and I opened up, and I didn't open up to the right page. I opened up to this page, and I thought, American small business is being murdered. I thought, well, yeah, undeniably, but it's the subtitle that is so telling in this article, because it, as we'll get into later, it really did show me that there's a current running through the GOP right, which in many ways is sort of the classic way in which a Republican can distinguish himself. But we'll get into that. And more importantly, look at that line. We're living through the greatest transfer of wealth from the middle class to the elites in history. Now, put bluntly, that's a class war argument.
Yeah.
Now, the article itself doesn't merely align itself, the author doesn't merely align herself with small business. It's fundamentally an attack on the big corporate giants and their capacity to push, to shape the federal government into actions which murder small business and enhance the wealth and the power of, I'd say big capital, but we'll say big business, as I think they talk about in here at various times. But it was so striking to me, because we're not supposed to hear conservatives, Republicans talk. We're used to them talking about big government and the evils of big government. What we're not used to is that kind of sentence. We're living through the greatest transfer of wealth. Now, those of us on the left who've been watching the class war of the last 45, maybe 50 years, pursued by both the neoliberals and the neoliberals in the Democratic and Republican Party,
right?
Undeniably, okay. But it's the case. We don't expect to see it coming from the conservatives exactly. But I'll eventually get to this. Now, they talk about a power block, or she talks about a power block between big business and bureaucrats and the political parties. So yeah, this is an amazing and very telling piece. And by the way, I'll just point out that I actually tweeted this piece and said, once again, the right is hijacking the American past, but in particular, this time they're hijacking the radical story, the radical past.
So can I just want to put a little bit of a pause here, given that you are a Marxist historian or a historian of Marx, or both.
Or both. Well, I don't call myself a Marxist historian these days, but I continue to see the world in terms of the Marxist studies I did for so many years.
So, this is interesting to me because, and we're going to, in the second part of the show, we're going to delve into the politics of really, it's a messaging. This is a messaging, a political messaging strategy. And we'll delve more into the strategic side and how this affects the elections moving forward, which, are very scary right now for a lot of folks who realize that we may not, Democrats meaning, are not going to be able to have any power, frankly. I think there's a serious chance in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yes.
So with that being said, I want to pause for a second, because I'm wondering if the war on capitalism, as
the war by capitalism.
No, the war on capitalism by the left in messaging, which I'm not opposed to, but also there's a lot of misinformation out there and misunderstanding of like what Marxism is and what being a democratic socialist is versus a communist. Or, obviously we can get into the details there, but I'm wondering if this whole conversation about like taking on capitalism has created an opening for the right wing to talk about small business, which of course is complete bullshit, as we know. But if we're not talking about small business, and I always found this so interesting because I thought the healthcare debate should be around, if you don't, back when we were fighting over Obamacare, I always thought it should be framed from the perspective of small business owners. And yes, there's the human side and comparing us to all sorts of different countries, but that argument wasn't working. So, just like when I went on Fox News the other day and I talked about the vaccine, and, you want inflation not to go up, then take the vaccine so we can end this pandemic. If you want more money in your pocket, you're not going to hear Don Bongino say to folks, he doesn't want the government spending money, but he's never going to say to his audience, let me have your money back that the government gave you. Of course not. Because at the end of the day, it is about small business and individuals who want to have money in their pocket. That is you can get them that way. You can get them on you can get them when you talk about small businesses, the economy, and bring them over to our side. And I feel like the war against capitalism, it's not a mess. We're trying to get people over to our side, not have inner left fights over nuances of XYZ. So I don't know. I mean, does it?
Well, yeah, in that sense, look, in that sense, Bernie was onto something. And I'm going to connect this in a more strategic way when we move into that question of electoral politics. The fact is, when Bernie went after the billionaires, he was doing exactly what needed doing. The problem was he left it hanging there.
That's
right. He didn't make some crucial connections. Okay. But so to pick up on your point about healthcare, it's been impossible for me to actually figure out why it was that for decades, not only corporate bosses and the rich, but small business people would oppose some model of national health care.
Exactly.
But likely because they couldn't quite, it's very hard. People don't seem to understand this. When Social Security was enacted in 1935, as under the New Deal, and FDR wanted to include healthcare. What I couldn't understand as I was getting into the history of all that is why the big corporations didn't say, "Oh yeah, what a great idea." But the point was, in the 30s, big business didn't give healthcare to workers. Right. I mean, workers just didn't have healthcare. So in essence, after World War II, when Truman was prepared to push national health care, business saw an opportunity, and this was the opportunity. They were opposed on, if you like, ideological grounds to national health care, because they really did not want to enhance the government was so popular at the time. The last thing they wanted to do was enhance the popularity of government and the Democrats. These guys were Republicans. But what they calculated is that they could literally co-op. I don't like the word co-op, but they could reel in the big labor unions that had been challenging them ever since FDR empowered the unions in 1935 as well with the National Labor Relations Act. And they negotiated with the unions the health care that workers wanted. In fact, at first, unions didn't want to negotiate health care. They wanted it to be a government enterprise. They wanted it to be national, that all would have it, that it wouldn't tie a worker to a company. But in 1950, when the Democrats continued to be weak on the question, and Southern Democrats, for racist reasons, didn't join the Northern Democrats in pushing this, they secured what was called the Treaty of Detroit, so that the automobile companies secured the compromise with labor unions. Now, if we go forward in time, labor continued to push for national health care, but not as strenuously as they once had. And you keep coming forward. The question is, why didn't smaller enterprises, what we think of as small businesses, why didn't they see the benefit in lining up with progressives and leftists? That's a good question. There may well be studies done of that, and I don't know them.
As far as I know, and when you have to debate these things on conservative shows, like, I try to do as much research as possible to understand, but I've seen nothing. It doesn't make sense to me, and maybe it's because the left does not want to take on unions, and many unions have not been for Medicare for all. Obviously, not all of them,
as
but
a New York State,
as a New York State, exactly, because it's. Well, for a lot, because it's part of their negotiation process. And it's, I don't think at the end of the day, it's going to hurt them to be for Medicare for all at all in terms of negotiating power. But, people are conditioned, and organizations and institutions are conditioned by the power dynamics that have existed for years. And so simultaneously, I just don't think the left has put a lot of energy, because of the co-opting and messaging of small businesses by the Chamber of Commerce, which, again, let's remember, the Chamber of Commerce, this extremely large, powerful entity in Washington, is supposed to represent small businesses. And if you're a member of your local Chamber of Commerce, you may be a Democrat.
I have to stop you for a moment, okay? One of the great, if you like, myths is that the Chamber of Commerce was meant to represent small businesses.
Right.
It's not.
It
was always meant to represent big business, but they were very clever. They literally cultivated a grassroots, if you like, base of support by having community chamber of commerce array. But if you look, but there's actually another organization, less well-known, National Small Business, that are much more interested in smaller business. Chamber of Commerce has always represented the interests of big capital. Always.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, because I grew up in a community where a small town, very bucolic town, and you know, I would say most members of the Chamber of Commerce were completely clueless as to what was happening, you know, at the national level, and they would have, you know, regular meetings and fish fries and barbecues, and they'd share each other's cards.
Absolutely, sure.
And it was, you know, I think the makeup was probably, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I think the makeup was probably 50-50. I don't think anybody went in there with an ideological bent. It was about supporting a local, you know, accountant or going to this restaurant. Or
on that I agree. Those who belong in small towns and cities to the chambers of commerce, there is no question that those local organizations represent the interests of what's Main Street.
Exactly.
No question. But I'm talking about the national organization.
100%.
What they were about for as long as you can look back.
But the messaging. So what I think we agree on this. This is not a point of difference. But the messaging that they put out there, the National Chamber of Commerce, was never about supporting big business. It was always about small business. And because there were local chapters, people thought, oh yeah, of course, I go to my local chamber. I mean, I grew up in a place where literally on a street called Main Street and Broadway was the local Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, it was like there were very few social activities back then. And you'd go to like the I don't know, like the Valentine's Day party or the, you know.
Members of the Chamber of Commerce when I was a kid probably divided up the Little League teams, and each one of them chose which team would be that, you know, the hardware store, which would be the pharmacy. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It was all over the place. All right. We're going to continue this debate over local Chamber of Commerce and much more. Actually, we're going to continue this debate about this conversation about how the right has basically tried to co-opt opportunities like small business in a sense where progressives haven't, and also the narratives that we have to win elections. We're going to go over to rockfin.com/Nomiki. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and click like and subscribe. And if you're not already on Rockfin, this is the time to join. It is like a subscription service. You go to Rockfin, you get a whole array, just like Netflix, of different shows, sports stuff. I don't watch sports, but like they got some sports stuff. We're trying to bring in more lefties over to Rockfin, and I hear that might be happening soon. So we want to diversify as much as possible. If you go over there, make sure to check us out. Click the like, subscribe to us on Rockfin as well as here. And if you're not already a patron, that's how we pay our bills, because these algorithms are all over the place. Go to patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. You'll check us out there and over at Rockfin. We'll be right back. Make America. Grab the book.
That's the book really that gets to the theme of our conversation. Take hold of our history.
Take hold of our history.
Make America radical.
Radical again. Make America radical. All right. We will see you right over there. Let's take a quick little pause and continue the conversation with Harvey Kaye.